Hello everyone, so today we're going to talk about the third and in some ways the highest type or subtype of INFJ. By highest I mean the most individuated kind of INFJ. It corresponds in Freud to what would be called the genital stage, because Freud had a tendency to articulate everything in terms of psychosexual development, but let's just use the concept of Jungian individuation here. The most individuated INFJ is the spiritualized INFJ. I also call him or her the liberated INFJ. In a sense, they're liberated of certain traits that belong to previous stages, namely the stage of adaptive submission, first subtype of INFJ, but also traits that belong to the stage of solipsism. These particular modes of existence, adaptive submission and solipsism, have certain defense and coping mechanisms that are specific to those stages, and they allow them to function in the world at some level, right? But they don't correspond to the full flourishing that comes with individuation, and this full flourishing is expressed in spiritualization. Now, I want to use also the concept that I developed in a recent video, which is the concept of the two modes of FE that are not in themselves healthy or unhealthy. It's healthy to have both. It's not healthy to have only one of them. Specifically, we're talking about INFJs here, okay? So the mode of introjective FE is the mode whereby you sort of absorb into yourself the norms, values, and modes of organization of the group. The mode of projecting FE is where you impose this on the group, or where you project this onto the group so that the group can embrace it for themselves. The balance between the two is the key to a mode of interaction with society that is the greatest source of satisfaction and happiness for an INFJ, and that belongs to the stage of spiritualization. What belongs to the stage of adaptive submission is really an FE form that, as the submissive term implies, a form of introjection of FE. You need this, and you also need the mode of projection that you will acquire as you go through the different syntheses that accompany your development towards spiritualization. The synthesis involves solipsism. Now, obviously, it's not a synthesis of the adaptive submissive's introjective FE with the solipsistic FE, which would be then projected, because as I explained in my previous video on FE, the solipsist doesn't have projective FE. They repress FE. But you couldn't understand this as also a necessary stage, insofar as, if you like, there's this battle between NI and FE, right? Where, like, at the primordial level, at an existential level, the INFJ feels like FE is primarily introjective, At the primordial level, this is what happens. This is why the first stage is introjective. The INFJ can have a reaction whereby they say, if I introject too much FE, this inevitably means we'll have to repress my NI, because if your primary mode of relationship to the external reality is to make your own what belongs to the group, you're repressing your subjectivity. Now, NI is the realm of your subjectivity. So, from the point of view of the primordial INFJ, if you like FE and NI cannot coexist, right? This is why you see the adaptive submissives choosing FE, and this is why you see the solipsistic INFJ choosing NI. But in a sense, it is, when you look at a synthesis between the two, as the valuation of NI, which happens with the solipsist, and the valuation of FE, which happens with the adaptive INFJ. If a synthesis can be realized, then you can advance towards a collaboration between those two functions, because those two functions make no mistake, are the most important in INFJ development. Of course, TI and SE are also crucial, but the two main functions of the INFJ are NI and FE for a reason, right? And the core, if you like, challenge and the core objective is to manage to get to a stage where you can allow those two functions to flourish in their coexistence rather than to compete with each other, because at first sight they would appear to compete, okay? And a spiritualized INFJ, which I explained that in the Infinite Soul, you know, my new book on the INFJ, that the spiritualized INFJ is both a type and an ideal. No one is perfectly spiritualized, in the same way that no one is completely genital in a Freudian term, in a Freudian, you know, parlance, or no one is completely individuated in Jungian parlance. There are different stages, but it is a goal and an ideal that you can orient yourself to and that you should orient yourself to. Now, the spiritualized type has managed to resolve severance between external reality, which is perceived as just having these norms and organization type and values that threaten to absorb us through introjection, and the NI world, which is very comforting. It allows us to let our subjectivity assert itself, consolidate itself, but is ultimately not expansive and not enriched by external reality. The severance is resolved through this notion that I've explored in previous videos, that a spiritualized INFJ is able to create a bridge between their vision, their NI worldview, and external reality, as in many ways an FE world. Of course, it really is an FESE world, but again, in the psyche of the INFJ, it's an FE world, by managing to articulate a project, a vision, right, which itself incorporates a social dimension. This might not seem intuitive to someone who's very solipsistic, but I think this is the key. If your project that is heavily imbued with your subjectivity, NI-driven subjectivity, is to be translatable into the domain of external reality, including social reality, it will have to connect with that domain by means of articulation, among other things, in terms of norms, values, and human relationships. If you can do that, you will be able to express the originality of your subjectivity, your NI world, but also allow us to be translated into the concrete social dynamics of external reality. And this is how you can continue your individuation and significantly reduce the, if you like, enervating frustrations that are necessarily attendant upon the first stage of adaptation and submission, and the second stage of solipsism. Now, there's much more to say on this topic. You can sense that I'm opening a Pandora's box here in a sense. But that's good news. It means that there'll be many more videos, including more in-depth videos that I will first share, and maybe just share on my Patreon page for my Patreon supporters. I'm going to be doing more in-depth videos on these various topics, but don't fear anything. Like I'll continue releasing content every day here, but the sort of longer videos, I think, would have a good audience among my patrons. So you can support me on Patreon. You know that it helps me keep the channel afloat. It really helps me keep the channel going. I've had new supporters lately. Thank you so much. Thank you to my order supporters. The link is below to my Patreon if you'd like to join. From $2.50 a month, it helps me keep going. And in all the explanations I provide in my videos, I use insights from my latest book, The Infinite Soul, on INFJ life in the modern world, and how to interact with social reality in such a way that you can become spiritualized, as I've discussed today, INFJ life in the modern world, in a world that is often seen as hostile. The relationship between adaptive submission, solipsism, and spiritualization. If you have loved the book but haven't reviewed it yet, please consider reviewing it. It helps with the referencing. I need more reviews on Amazon. Okay, so the link is right below, as well as this prequel, The Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality, which is the deepest investigation of the INFJ mind and its existential constitution. Keep in mind, these two go together. They explore the same concepts and refine them. Okay, guys, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.